The young and the restless spoiler's shock, Cole's battle with kidney failure has become the defining crisis of his life, a struggle that he faces alone even as those who love him rally around in desperate hope. When Elena delivered the grim diagnosis that Cole's kidneys were failing and that only the gift of a compatible organ could save him, it felt as though the very foundations of his world had shifted beneath him. He lay in the hospital bed, gaunt and exhausted, each breath a labor of will, haunted by the knowledge that every tick of the clock was another step closer to a fate from which there could be no return. News spread through Genoa City's tight-knit circles like wildfire. Friends, colleagues, even distant acquaintances streamed into the hospital's corridors seeking to help, donating blood and offering prayers. Yet despite the outpouring of goodwill, the test results were stark. The only perfect match for Cole's failing body was Kyle Abbott. In that startling discovery lay both salvation and torment. Kyle was not family by blood, but in the twisted alchemy of destiny, his DNA fit Cole's need like a missing puzzle piece. Yet to donate a kidney would mean sacrificing half of his own renal capacity, an irreversible choice that threatened the very vitality of a man whose own life had only recently begun to flourish again after hardship. Jack and Diane, relentless in their protective instincts, recoiled at the suggestion. They forbade Kyle from considering such a sacrifice. They reminded him of all he stood to lose, his robust health, his future, his dreams, and insisted there must be another way. But Cole's window for hope was closing fast, and every alternative seemed more tenuous than the last. Waiting for a deceased donor could take months or years, time he simply did not have. Seeking a less-than-perfect match risked devastating complications. The raw truth was inescapable. To save Cole, Kyle's sacrifice was the most certain lifeline. And so, in the sterile hush before dawn, Kyle stood beside Cole's bed, gripping the edge of the mattress as though it were a lifeline of its own, and made a vow that would alter the course of both their lives. The fight to secure Kyle's kidney donation ignited a storm of emotion and confrontation that no one in Genoa City could have foreseen. Claire confronted Jack and Diane in their pristine living room, her normally calm voice breaking with urgency as she pleaded for Kyle's right to choose. She reminded them that love and loyalty often demand the greatest sacrifices, that refusing Kyle could doom Cole to a life he did not choose, to die waiting. Summer, torn between loyalty to her brother and compassion for Cole, threatened to go public with the story if the family continued to block Kyle's decision. She had already seen Kyle's resolve and would not stand by as bureaucracy and fear extinguished a chance at life. As the Abbott patriarch and matriarch found themselves cornered by the collective will of those who believed that life was worth risking everything for, Kyle made his own appeal. He spoke directly to Jack about legacy, explaining that nothing he could build in business would matter if he lost the capacity to live with a clear conscience. He reminded Diane of the countless times she had shown him what true family meant, and how he could honor her greatest lesson by giving without measure. Slowly, the impenetrable armor of Jack's caution began to crack when he witnessed Kyle's unflinching eyes. A mirror of the same steely determination that once drove Jack himself to overcome adversity. In a gesture both painful and profound, Jack placed a restraining hand on Kyle's shoulder, his own voice thick with pride and sorrow. "If this is your choice, son, then I will stand with you." Diane, tears streaming down her cheeks, offered a trembling nod, and with that, the final barrier fell. The hospital's transplant coordinators moved swiftly, and soon Kyle was wheeled into the operating room, his arm brushing against the sterile sheets of Cole's bed as he passed, a silent promise that he would carry half of Cole's life within him forever. In the bright antiseptic glow of the transplant suite, surgeons worked in coordinated precision to remove Kyle's healthy kidney and place it within Cole's battered body, an act of hope sealed by science and sacrifice. Hours passed in a blur of monitors and murmured instructions before the lead surgeon emerged, face solemn but triumphant. The transplant had been successful. As Kyle rested in recovery, his own body recovering from the loss of one kidney, he first thought of Cole, of the renewed life now pulsing through his friend's veins. Back in Cole's room, the beeping monitors now signaled stability rather than decline, and when Cole awoke to Kyle's familiar face, pale but unwavering, He reached out with trembling gratitude. In that moment, all the fears and objections of the past days slipped away, replaced by a bond forged in the crucible of mortality and tested by the ultimate sacrifice. Genoa City buzzed with the news of a miracle born from human compassion, and even Victor Newman, hearing of the lengths Kyle had gone to save a man not his kin, could not hide his admiration. He offered Kyle a simple handshake in the hospital corridor, eyes betraying a respect that no business deal could earn. And for Cole, waking each day filled with strength where once there had been only fragility, the knowledge of Kyle's gift became a guiding light, proof that some debts of gratitude can never be repaid, and that in love's truest form, to give is to live on in the heart of another. The hospital corridor seemed to hold its breath as Claire's wide eyes found Kyle's in the hallway outside Cole's room. Victoria stood beside her, hand clasped over her mouth, tears glistening on her cheeks. Both women had poured out their hearts, Claire with trembling urgency, Victoria with fierce maternal devotion, pleading that Kyle alone could save Cole's life. Each word they spoke echoed in Kyle's mind long after their voices grew hoarse. Please, Kyle. It's him or nothing. He felt the weight of their desperation settle into his chest, cold and insistent. This was no longer an abstract decision or a noble gesture, it was the fulcrum upon which the lives of everyone he loved would turn. So Kyle retreated to the silence of his own home, pacing the length of the living room as the city lights gleamed through the windows. Every step mirrored the turmoil inside him. He recalled Victor's guarded expression when he had learned the truth, Victor's calculating gaze as he weighed whether to endorse such a selfless act from someone who was, in Victor's view, an outsider by blood. If Kyle chose to donate, he would demonstrate a devotion so absolute that even Victor might be compelled to grant him the respect, and perhaps even the blessing, he had denied for so long. Yet if Kyle allowed himself to be swayed by Claire's pleading and Victoria's tears, what would that mean for their relationship? Could he ever reconcile the selflessness required to save a life with the selfish desire to hold on to the woman he loved? The thought of telling Claire that he could not risk losing himself, and by extension her trust, gnawed at him like a dull ache. He thought of Summer's sacrifice. How she had once given a portion of her liver to Lola in a desperate bid to prove her love. For a time, it seemed that her gift would cement their bond forever, that no trial could sever the tether between them. And yet, in the aftermath of that life and death choice, Summer found herself more isolated than ever, stripped of the very connection she had fought so hard to secure. She had lost everything in exchange for saving a life. Kyle knew in his bones that he faced a similar crossroads. To give half of his health to Cole, knowing that such an act might drive a wedge between him and Claire, or to protect his own future by walking away, leaving Cole's fate to chance. The magnitude of the choice pressed on him like a physical weight. If he stepped forward and surrendered a kidney, he would earn the unspoken admiration of Victor Newman, forever altering his standing in the Newman empire and among their circle. People would see him as courageous, unwavering, a man willing to lay down his own life to preserve another's. Yet in doing so, he risked unimaginable loss, Claire's certainty that he loved her above all, Victoria's faith that her son's life, and by extension her own peace of mind, was secured, and his own sense of identity unbroken. What if, in the eyes of Claire, this sacrifice transformed him into something she no longer recognized? What if the gulf between them widened instead of narrowing? Kyle paused by the window, hand pressed flat against the cool glass. The lights of Genoa City shimmered, alive with countless stories unfolding in every gleaming high-rise and shadowed alley. He understood that his decision would ripple through all of them, changing destinies in ways neither he nor anyone else could fully foresee. He closed his eyes and pictured Cole's pale face moments before the transplant, the relief washing over him when he first awoke and saw Kyle's bruised but steadfast smile. He saw Claire's gratitude, Victoria's tearful embrace, and even Victor's grudging nod of respect. He weighed that vision against the possibility of Claire's heartbreak if he could not bring himself to give. At last, Kyle let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. There would be no easy path here, no choice free of sacrifice. But he knew that when a life he cherished hung in the balance, the true measure of love was the willingness to bear one's own cost without reservation. With that resolve crystallizing in his heart, Kyle picked up his phone, ready to tell the transplant coordinator that he would go forward with the donation, no matter the personal toll. In that moment, everything became clear. To save Cole would demand everything of him, but in giving all he had, Kyle Abbott would finally prove that some debts of the heart transcend every fear, every loss, and every gamble we take for the ones we love. Nick Newman paused outside the gilded entrance to the Genoa City Athletic Club, the soft glow of chandeliers filtering through the windows and casting dancing patterns across the marble floor. He'd come out for a breath of fresh air, unsettled by the relentless pace of his law practice and the endless swirl of gossip surrounding his half-sister Summer's sudden engagement in Milan. As he stood there, the door behind him swung open and he spotted Phyllis Summers seated alone at a corner table, a half-empty glass of Merlot catching the light like a deep ruby. She looked up, saw him lingering, and insisted with characteristic boldness that he join her. He hesitated. Memories of their last volatile encounter still prickled at the edges of his conscience, but her smile was both pleading and mischievous, and he found himself drawn to the table as if by fate. Phyllis waved off the waiter's offer of an additional chair and patted the seat beside her. "You look like you could use some company," she said, her voice low and warm. Nick slipped in across from her, watching as she toyed with the stem of her wineglass. "You know, you worry too much," she began, eyes flicking to the corkboard by the bar where headlines about Abbott Communications and Newman Enterprises vied for attention. "Summer's living her best life in Milan. She's found her perfect match, someone who makes her laugh, who makes her feel like herself again. You should see him, he's hotter than the sun." Nick raised his eyebrows. "You sound almost jealous." Phyllis laughed, a sound at once light and brittle. "Jealous? Please. I just want my daughter to be happy. And if some handsome stranger halfway around the world can give her that, then more power to him. But let me be clear, if anyone dares interfere with her happiness, I will get on the next plane and drag them back myself." She leaned in, her finger tracing invisible patterns on the tablecloth. "Do you understand me, Nick?" His heart stuttered at the sudden fierceness in her gaze, so familiar yet so unpredictable. The way she toyed with the knife at her side sent a jolt through him, as though the blade could at any moment flip from table decor to weapon of warning. He swallowed, recalling his own anxiety about Summer's future. "I get it, Phyllis," he said, keeping his tone steady. "We all want what's best for her." But she was already on another tangent. "And what about Daniel?" she pressed, voice softer now. "He's in limbo since he left Billy's firm. We both know he's brilliant, Nick, but without purpose he's restless, he's like a caged animal." She paused, eyes narrowing as if weighing him personally responsible. "I was so sure Abbott Communications would give him that direction. I was wrong." Nick felt a pang of empathy. He knew how it felt to lose your footing when the career you'd staked everything on fell apart. "Daniel will find his way," he offered gently, but Phyllis shook her head. "No," she insisted. "He needs something tangible. Something more than your assurances. He needs a reason to get up in the morning besides nursing old resentments." Nick studied her, the fine lines around her eyes, evidence of countless struggles and triumphs, the determined set of her jaw, as if she were bracing herself against a storm. He realized then that beneath her bravado lay a vulnerability only a mother could feel, a fear that she might fail to protect her child from disappointment. He reached across the table, placing his hand over hers. The glow of the candle between them caught the tears she'd been fighting back. "We'll figure it out," he promised. Suddenly, the club's double doors swung open again, and Michael Baldwin strode in, spotting them immediately. He paused at their table, hesitation flickering across his face, and Phyllis straightened, regaining her composure. Michael slid into the third chair, nodding at Nick. "Hey, sorry to butt in. Thought I'd find you here." He glanced at Phyllis, sensing the charged atmosphere. Is everything okay? Phyllis gave a quick smile, pulling her hand away from Nick's. Better now. But Michael's brow furrowed as he studied her. He knew her too well to accept that at face value. Before he could question further, Phyllis stood abruptly. I need to make a call. She swept a hand across the table, gathering her purse and coat. Nick watched her go, the click of her heels a punctuation mark in the charged air. When she reached the end of the room, she paused, turned, and offered him a parting look, equal parts challenge and plea. Then she was gone, swallowed by the hum of dinner service and the low murmur of conversation. Nick sat back, the wineglass trembling in his hand. In that brief encounter, he had seen Phyllis's fierce protective love for Summer, her simmering anxiety over Daniel's future, and the restless energy that drove her from crisis to crisis. He realized anew the weight of the choices before him, to stand by his family as they fought for their dreams and survival, or to pull away and risk losing the bonds that defined him. Outside, the city lights glimmered like distant stars, indifferent to the dramas unfolding within. And in that moment, Nick understood that each of them, the determined mother, the worried brother, the restless son, were locked in a dance of love and loyalty, where every step could lead to salvation or heartbreak. As he drained the last of his wine and rose to leave, he vowed to himself that he would not let fear dictate his future. The stakes were too high, the ties too strong. And above all, he would not fail the people he loved most.